At 2:14 a.m. local time, Iran launched hundreds of cheap missiles and drones at multiple U.S. military bases. The Patriot missile system operator at the U.S. base on Bahrain Island detected the first target, a low-flying object moving slowly northeast at about 200 kilometers per hour. Then the second and third targets showed up one after another, quickly increasing to 6. This is a suicide drone carrying enough explosives to destroy a building. At least a dozen of these drones targeted the Bahrain Naval Support Base, where 8,000 U.S. soldiers and their families are stationed. The base fence is about 800 meters away. The commander's problem is cost calculation. Each interceptor missile costs millions of dollars, so using expensive missiles to shoot down cheap drones just isn't economically sensible. Every time an interceptor missile is used, the ability to handle bigger threats later weakens a bit. But protecting civilian lives is non-negotiable. He ordered to launch the missile, which shot out of the launcher and accelerated to several times the speed of sound within seconds. Using kinetic energy, it smashed straight into the target drone. The drone neither reacted nor detected the threat. The interceptor missile destroyed it over the harbor, and the debris fell into the water. But the drones kept coming, and Iran sent enough of them to try to wear down the defenses. However, the commander didn't realize most of these drones were just decoys. While the Patriot system focused its attention northeast, a ballistic missile came straight down from above at over 10 times the speed of sound, hitting the service center about 40 meters from the command center. A second missile took out a satellite uplink antenna. There were 2 hits, but the actual damage was almost nothing. The satellite uplink is just one of the Fifth Fleet's many communication methods, with other radio and satellite backup lines in place. The system was rerouted within minutes, so fleet operations weren't affected. The Udair Air Base, about 80 kilometers across the sea in the UAE direction, is facing a bigger challenge. The Joint Air Operations Center is inside a reinforced building with all personnel holding their posts. At 3 a.m., swarms of Iranian ballistic missiles flew over Qatar's coastline. The second wave of missile launches started rising before the first wave even arrived, followed closely by a third wave, keeping the defense system constantly on edge. Operators intercepted the targets about 65 kilometers out, completing calculations and confirming engagement within 2 seconds. The interceptor missile broke away from the launcher and made its first interception about 24,000 meters above Doha, where the warhead and interceptor disappeared simultaneously. During the 90-second battle, every Iranian missile was met with interception as operators fired in a steady mechanical rhythm. Iran's only success at Al-Udeid was a maneuvering warhead that changed its trajectory around 9,000 meters high to dodge the interceptor. 2 warheads and a low-flying drone got through the window. One early warning radar was damaged, and a section of the runway got blown up with craters. But these damages aren't a big deal. There's a high-altitude AWACS plane handling radar duties, the base has backup systems, and the runway was fixed within an hour using quick-setting concrete. Even though the explosion shook the control room, Air Raid Command never stopped. Things got intense over Kuwait with 380 Laish ballistic missiles and drones launching one after another. This was the most intense joint attack in modern warfare. Operators spotted the first Laish missile about 56 kilometers away. It was diving at 6 times the speed of sound at around 18,000 meters altitude. 8 seconds later, 2 interceptors were launched. That's standard procedure. The first interceptor hit the target launcher at 12,000 meters while it kept firing. Pairs of white tail flames shot up into the sky, exploding continuously at high altitude, with debris falling to the ground. The crew kept loading non-stop. Every few minutes, a volley of Star missiles crossed the border, and every few minutes, the Patriot system responded. For 3 hours straight, in the ongoing battle, all 380 targets were intercepted. None got through, achieving a perfect hit rate. But intercepting 380 times means 380 clouds of debris falling everywhere, mostly in the open desert, with some hitting the supply area and causing injuries. Ground crew patched up the runway while directing vehicles around the craters. One out-of-control drone skimmed past Kuwait International Airport. Besides causing inconvenience to commercial flights, it barely had any other impact. At 3:47 a.m., the air defense system at Dufra Air Base got alerted to 2 ballistic trajectories coming from inside Iran. The system immediately launched intercept missiles, which climbed to about 97 kilometers. The warheads separated and sped toward the targets at 8 times the speed of sound. The guidance heads locked onto the descending Iranian warheads, and the two objects collided head-on. In the northern Arabian Sea, Iran fired ballistic missiles at the 3rd Carrier Strike Group. The USS Lincoln carrier made an emergency turn to avoid the missiles. The escort ship's Aegis radar started tracking, and the cruisers and destroyers spread out widely. Interceptor missiles launched from vertical launch cells soared up, intercepting the warheads outside the atmosphere. The final kinetic warheads slammed into the vacuum at 13 times the speed of sound, using gas jet steering for precise strikes. 2 missiles were intercepted before hitting the ground, and follow-up interceptors targeted the next wave of incoming warheads. 3 destroyers fired simultaneously. 2 drones flew about 15 meters above the water and were detected and shot down by the ship Anapos S air defense system. Not a single Iranian weapon hit the carrier or any ship. 15 minutes later, the flight deck was back in operation, and the fighter jets, carrying 3,600 kilos of GPS-guided bombs, were ready to take off. The catapult launches the fighter from 0 to 265 kilometers per hour. The fighters climb eastward, 14 jets taking off at the same time within 9 minutes, including fighters, electronic warfare planes, and early warning aircraft,